this car has a coolant leak. Evidently, it was kind of difficult for the people to find it. I'm not. Oh shit! Damn it! Can I walk right this week? So I think I got the light on. So it looks like, you know, the water pump's probably the culprit here. There's signs of hot coolant, hot water dripping all down the front cover. There's signs of coolant leak right here. The upper hose here is the upper radiator hose, and if you look under this intake here, it goes to the back there. Now, when looking for a leak, oil leaks, coolant leaks, all leaks, we have to take gravity into consideration. You know, we can't defy gravity. So this is the highest point I've stumbled upon, and if you look in the back right there, where it's kind of ashy, some call it ashy, but it look a little charred over there. It looks the white soot right there. That's the upper outlet housing for the coolant, and that's where I stopped. It has really good implication that that's likely the culprit of where the leak's coming from, and this sits under the intake. So if I have to address that, or I do have to address it, I'm just going to give you the answer now. The intake's going to have to come off because of how it wraps around. Not a big deal. So what I did to diagnose this, I don't know if you ever looked at some of my old videos, but I have a pressure testing device that I made from an air regulator. It's pretty simple, nothing complicated. You can get this from Harbor Freight. So you got an inlet for the air regulator coming from the air hose. You have the knob here where you can regulate the air, and then you have the outlet, of course. And this is just simply going to the cooling system. I have a gauge here where I can meter how much air I'm putting in there up to 10 psi, and I'll just gradually switch it in very small increments to increase pressure, to lightly allow the pressure relief valve to open up with this cap here. So this is 15 psi. The good thing is the car can tolerate 15 psi, so I'm not hurting anything if I lose my abilities to regulate the air or know how much I'm putting in there to gauge how much is going in there, obviously. So it's not a big deal. I simply just added my male end to the female end of the hose going to the reservoir here, and it sits on the driver's side left, and I just simply blocked it off with something, nothing major. So the thing is, I would administer air pressure, but the problem was I couldn't see anything leaking, and I would naturally assume air is thinner than liquid. Why isn't it leaking? Sorry. So I guess if I was to put some type of fluid in there, it would show. But being that like I said, I already found it, I had to start the car up and let things circulate and administer air pressure simultaneously to find that it was leaking. And it's not that bad. It's just, bear with me, I got a leaky hose. So I'm gonna turn the knob and we'll watch the gauge rise. I'll just let it do its thing, start the car up, and I'll show you the leak. Alright, it's several days later. I'm gonna work on going ahead and resolving this coolant leak down here at the water outlet. I'm gonna leave this crossbar or the strut bar up top here, and hopefully I should have enough clearance. I got about an inch. Oh shit, my light went out. I got about an inch of clearance there. I could probably lift up the intake and slide it straight out again, because the coolant outlet is down at the bottom down there under the throttle body. So what's off is the cover, and there's some insulation here I took off in the back, and just basically tear into it and start getting everything I see off. There's a map sensor under here, and EGR, not EGR, but evap purge valve here, and like a PCV system here. So we work on getting all these connectors off, and there's some miscellaneous bolts around here to intake tube and pull it out. Alright, get this PCV off. Just simply turn this and should lift right on out. There you go. There's a quick connect here at the other end over there if you follow it over. And the evap, slide in and pull out. There's a connector. Remove that. There's another Christmas tree fastener here that goes to the map sensor on the back here. There's a vacuum line here that goes to the brake booster. Pull that off. And with no specific order, after I get these 10mm bolts here out, it look like they connect to the plenum. Take off these 13mm bolts here, no specific order, and work my way up to the front where the throttle body is, and we'll work on getting that intake tube out. I got a 1/2-inch drive. I should be using a 13. Let me put a swivel on that. This goes to the throttle body. So these bolts are different sizes. So this one, the short one, goes in the back. I'll just try to place these in a fashion where I can remember. So the back one, far back, has a short bolt. Next one has the long bolt. Very front one has the long bolt. And these two in the middle have the long bolts. So the one in the back has the short one, and the rest of them seems to have the long bolts. So, am I right? So the only short bolt is the one in the very back. So I can remove this without having to take this bar off. Yeah, I'm gonna have to take that. I'm gonna take that bar off. Not a big deal. So there's two 18mm bolts. Put those right back, and it's the same for the other side. So got that off there. I had dropped two washers. I got those back up though. No big deal. All right, let's pull this intake off and see what we got. Let me see if I can get it on a flat surface. All right, we got the upper intake exposed. Now we have the water outlet. So when I pressure test it, you can see there now that it's more definite where the remnants of coolant was spewing out. I'm not going to change the belt. The belt's not squealing, so we don't have to worry about contamination. However, I will. I'm going to figure out a way to drain it. Ideally, of course, I should go through the petcock on the radiator. I think I'm going to take that route. So the coolant reservoir is filled, I can see. Let me figure out how I want to do this. I'm going to go through the petcock on the radiator and drain it. We're on the passenger side, right front, under the car. The petcock is located there. I'm not sure if I think this car probably in an accident because there's no cover for the undercarriage here, but there's the petcock. Once I crack that open, it's going to start draining from that little port there, I guess because of how I got the car positioned. And I'm just going to let it drain to a pan there and let it do its thing while I get the rest of the bolts off to remove that water outlet. Literally had one of them scam phone calls from the preview center. I guess I fill out some information so I can win a prize. Oh gosh, I'm dropping everything. I'm gonna put a hose clamp on this when I get it back together. I think I got it drained low enough. Yep, we do. I'm gonna shut off that petcock now and then finish the repair. Unfortunately, it didn't work out too well when I thought I could get all the fluid to go through that one orifice, but luckily the cover directed it right into the pan, so it worked out. So it would be probably best to take off that shield, that cover at the bottom of the undercarriage there, so you get a straight shot at the petcock drain. Get that off this. Ooh, there's a connector right there. I don't want to mess that up. Now you can get a whole outlet housing, but I'm taking the other route because it's a sense of time constraints. So I'm going to just clean this up and replace the O-rings, and that'll be it. This is held on by two 10mm fasteners, it seems. That's it. Try to keep coolant from getting directly on that belt. I need to put a rag under there. Something's better than nothing. This car like it was eating a lot of oil. Alright, there we go. So I should get this O-ring here and this gasket down here. So I'm replacing both of these. And O'Reilly seem to have had those. Oh shoot, seem to have those both in stock. So I'm gonna get to clean this off until my parts get here, and just continue on with the repair. But other than that, I mean, it didn't take long. I think to remove this intake, labor time was supposed to be 1.8 hours. Complete removal and replacement. This is my first time ever doing this, so I am putting a new hose clamp on here. Obviously, it needs one, so we don't have to worry about this coolant crud here. I think this is because of the type of coolant that GM uses. It corrodes like that once it starts leaking. All right, let me get everything cleaned up and wait on this part, and we'll get back to the installation. I got my area cleaned up pretty well. Unfortunately, I couldn't get a O-ring from O'Reilly's, but I did have an assortment of O-rings that worked out pretty well. So the O-ring really wasn't but this big of the inner diameter, but it was real thick. So I was able to get it around there, and it worked out perfect. So here's the gasket that goes to the other mating surface to the block. And here's the part number here if you're interested. And hopefully this will work out just fine. I know it's not a factory gasket, but should serve its purpose. I should get a pick. Throw that right there. I'm going to use a little bit of dielectric grease on the O-ring so it'll go in there properly. I did take some brake cleaner and a wire brush and go around this outlet housing and try to clean up some of the erosion and discoloration that the coolant left. So, but I did get a hose clamp, and we're gonna get this back on there like so. Hopefully this works out. I just need a little bit, honestly, just enough to coat the surface. It's cold in here. I think this will work. Yeah, just a little bit of work, just fine. Perfect. Tighten this with a snug with a 1/4 inch. We'll be good to go. Cool. Alright, I'm just going to get everything installed in reverse order. And carry on my other repairs. I am doing brakes and rotors. Funny thing, the brakes are low, so I'm going to replace them. I need to clean the inside of this hose out. It don't look good at all. But yeah, the funny thing was the noise was coming from the right front wheel It wasn't a wheel bearing or anything. It was actually when the tires were installed at one point, the counterweights were stacked on top of each other on one side to where when it rotated, it would hit the steering knuckle that was pretty close to the tire. So it didn't have no much. It didn't have the. It had about 3/4 of an inch of clearance, and that double-sided tape wore off to where it would rub up on the knuckle, and then where it wore a groove into it. So that's what happened. It was pretty strange. Ain't got nothing to do with this, but hey. So here's the old O-ring here. It's flat. That's why we had a coolant leak when I diagnosed it originally. So just in case anyone was curious to see what this intake looked like underneath, this is it here. So they're held in by these little snaps there, and I'm pretty sure there's a gasket between here. Slide it right back under. Purge valve, reconnect it. The map sensor. If I can find it, please tell me I didn't leave it under there. Got close. Whew. Cool. Now just work on getting the intake tube back on here in the front, and I think, oh yeah, that joker, thought about it. This goes into a breather on the left side valve cover. So I think we're good to go. Let's see here, the evap, map. We got the vacuum for the brake booster, breather tube here. I just gotta tighten this back up. I think that's it. Just that fast. I still gotta put the brakes and rotors on in the front here, and I'll just simply, of course, get this crossbar up here, and let's look at that. Let's do that. this car is done. First time doing this intake job, not bad at all, just like any other job. I did forget, I didn't show on the video that, oh shit, I forgot to put the PCV hose in the middle here, and that runs to the right side in valve cover. I want to say intake, right side of the valve cover there. Let's take a look at it. Oh shit, I'm screwing up, man. Oh yeah, if you don't know, you fill the coolant up over on the driver's side over there. But everything looks nice and clean, no leaks. I'm going to take it on a test drive, make sure everything's good with this. Hopefully, alright, sorry, my memory is like jacked up on the phone. But hopefully we'll see if this car holds up. I do have to do control arms on the front, so just stay around in the future because I will be doing some control arms on that. Again, this took 1.8 hours, nothing big, very simplistic, very easy job. But I'm going to take this on a test drive so I can get on my other repairs. I got some other interesting things to work on. But if you're not subscribed, hit that link, subscribe to the channel, stay informed and have that reassurance in my work. See you on the next one.